This is my house. We'll start with the kitchen. It's seen better days, but it's also seen worse. We cook food, not banks here. We were really happy when we moved in to find out that we have this industrial size range stove in addition to a normal stove. What this is Food Not Banks, and essentially what it is just a free meal to the community. And we serve out here in front of a bank, and it's called Food Not Banks because what's totally wrong is that there's a building right there housing millions and millions of dollars and a bunch of people out here that can't afford to buy dinner. For anyone to go hungry in a society that's so wasteful as this one is totally wrong. Well, we get a lot of the food out of the Aldi's dumpster, actually. And we wash it off, don't worry. They throw out an unbelievable amount of perfectly good food. We serve this meal, and it's sponsored by the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World. It's a labor union. We come out here every Saturday at 6 p.m. We hope to, when we get the resources to do it, start doing it more frequently than just once a week. But right now, our resources are limited, so we do it every Saturday.
One of the things I really have loved about political science is that we are sort of an interdisciplinary slut because we'll go out there and we look at so many things that go into politics. That means we have to take a look at sociology and anthropology and psychology, economics certainly, philosophy definitely. All of these things feed into political science to answer these big questions about what happens in the world and how it happens and why it happens and whether or not it should happen and if there's anything we can do about it. It's one of those chances where you can be in a field and still have your hands in a whole bunch of other different fields, which means it's always a constant learning process. I was a Navy brat growing up at in some ways, the height of the Cold War. You know, the beginnings of the Reagan era were my high school years. You know, that's some of the tensest times. As you're coming into the world and realizing what's out there, there's going to be certain things that catch your interest. And what caught my interest were, you know, relations between states.
But this is kind of my meditation room. So I come up here and just kind of hang out and talk to God and myself and anybody else that'll listen, the dogs, any universe that might be picking up on me. So, kind of like all the candles in my little Zen garden that I made in my sink. In my spare time, which I don't have much of, I work on my house a lot. And this room is an example of just getting in and plaster patching and painting and trying to figure out how to make that sink work, you know, that's still stuck in this room. And you know, so it's that kind of thing that I enjoy. I enjoy working in my yard. Planted a willow tree out there not long ago, and so yeah, and spending time with my dogs. My type of woman, I guess, is someone who's intelligent, someone who is very caring, spiritual, and I mean by that, I don't mean religious necessarily. I mean spiritual, and someone who is who takes care of herself. Obviously, you know, everybody wants to be with somebody attractive, but the attractive is in the eyes of the beholder for sure. I'm more prone to date women who are more feminine. And I don't mean they have to put on tons of makeup and wear dresses and high heels all the time. I think feminine is an attitude of being proud of being a woman and being proud of who they are, and can dress up and go to the theater or, you know, put on jeans and a ball cap and go to the ball game.
We're going to McDonald's now. I order the same thing every time.
Can I take your order, please?
A number 3 with a Coke, no pickles on the burger.
Anything else for you today?
Nope.
$4.69, first food out, thank you.
$4.69. Special deal for you. I love McDonald's. You know, one year when I drove truck, I did my taxes and I had all these receipts from McDonald's, and my accountant added them up, and I had spent over $4,000 1 year in McDonald's. Now, I don't know if I actually spent that much. I probably got a bunch of other people's receipts and stuff, but I bet I spent a couple $1,000s. That's a lot of money at McDonald's. But when you find something that's good, you just don't mess with it. You just stay the course. Families are great when you're growing up, you know, because you've got no choices there. You're stuck with them. You know, it's not like you can go out and shop or be a free agent for a new family or new parents or new brothers or sisters, you know. It's not like the kids in the hall are going down there saying, hey, yo, I can get you the Johnsons at 5.5. You know, it doesn't work that way. To me, you know, you choose your new family when you get older because family are the people that you're closest to. It doesn't necessarily mean blood ties.
We make judgments every time we meet someone. Jaron says he rarely has a problem with anyone until his secret is revealed. He was born a woman on the outside, but always felt like a man on the inside. He says the most painful names he's been called are it and freak. Now, when was your first sense, your first awareness that there was something not right?
The beginnings of my cowboy days. Since the age of 5, I probably was aware that there was something different about me because I knew I was a boy, and of course everybody's telling me I wasn't, but I knew I was. But then my brother had parts I didn't have, you know, so I was like, okay, well, something's really weird here. But I did all the boy things. Now my mom will tell you that probably, you know, in retrospect, looking back, she could say that it was probably 2, that I was very conscious and aware of it, because she would try to put dresses on me and I would just like throw this biggest fit you could ever find and run through the house screaming my head off until she caught me, and she said she just finally gave up because it was such a hassle. So probably even at the age of 2, I was like, you're not putting that frilly thing on me, it's just not happening. You know. Now is that a cute face? I think I was 6 months old there. Mom used to give me $1 every year, and I think I had one that I really liked, and I used to take her out and bury her in the snow and things like that. So it wasn't that I liked her because, you know, she was a great doll. I just thought it was kind of cool to bury her in places, and so, you know, cut her hair, stuff like that. It wasn't ever a, you know, nurturing, caring kind of relationship I had with my doll.
Well, there hasn't been a whole lot of breast development. What there is has been very freeing in that, well, I know that it's me and not some little silicone gel packs. Just feels much more natural and not like you're trying to pull something off on somebody else. I've found that book learning can be useful on occasion for this, but not being able to actually see the technique that they're doing sometimes is very hard for me to visualize what it is that they're doing and how they're doing it. So most of the books tend toward a very high glam appearance, which, you know, if that's fine if you happen to be going to some formal occasion, but if you're going out to the supermarket for a carton of milk, it's not appropriate. Technically, I guess I'm not actually a professor, and that's crossing the fingers and hoping at some point I'm an instructor, because I do not yet have a PhD. But I do have the responsibility of teaching 300 students about comparative politics. And boy, is that fun. Actually, it can be a lot of fun at times, but it is also somewhat of a headache. The gender doesn't tend to play much of a role in the teaching process because I try and maintain a single gender profile for all of my students. So, while I'm on campus, I present as male as I can be, which sometimes isn't terribly male, as I'm told.
So I guess you are a transgendered individual, and that is that what you're comfortable being called?
Well, I actually prefer the term transsexual because I don't feel like anything in my gender ever changed or needed to.
Oh.
But my sex is a different story, so I prefer the term transsexual.
Okay. Well, how did you first discover that you were transsexual?
Well, that's kind of a difficult question to answer, and I would say that I actually never, well, until I started physically transitioning, never really knew securely that I was exactly transsexual, because that's a big leap of faith to take, to do something that's going to affect your body so drastically and irreversibly. But I've had inclinations and leanings, just knowing that something wasn't right since I was in 2nd grade. I don't feel as uncomfortable about my physical body as I think a lot of people do, and that's even straight people. When I was talking to my grandma about being trans, she said she knew what it was like to be in the wrong body because she always thought she should have a willowy figure, and she never did. So, I mean, I guess everybody's got some discomfort with their body on some level. I don't feel any more plagued by my body than I think a lot of people do.
I remember when I was really young, my mother was head of a Campfire Girl outing, and all these Campfire Girls were coming in. We had a meeting downstairs, and they all had their little beanies on and their little suits and stuff. And I really wanted to be a part of this group. And so I went and put my sister's my sister's Campfire Girl suit on, and I went down, and everyone said, "No, you can't be a part of it. This is for girls." And I said, "What do you mean? I'm a girl, see?" And they said, "No, no, no." And my mom took me aside, and she said, "You know, you have one of these things." And she kind of pointed out to me what was going on, and I kind of thought, well, hell, I can take care of that, you know. So she went back in the room with the other girls, and I went into the bathroom, and I got a wad of toilet paper. And I stuffed it down my pants and kind of pushed and shaped everything until everything was smooth and you couldn't see that anymore. And I went back out there and I pulled my skirt up and I showed my mom. I said, "Look, I'm one of the girls. I don't have that anymore." And they all laughed and just thought it was cuter than heck, you know. That was the first time I really, you know, thought, hey, wait a minute, you know, I'm one of you guys. When your child comes to you as something sexual or something different than what would be considered a normal problem, we're afraid how to handle it. We're afraid what society's going to say. We're afraid what the neighbors might say. We're afraid what, you know, the people at church or at school are going to say. But yet, we're not afraid to deal with something if your child comes and says, geez, I have a headache and I've got a lump growing out the side of my head, and, you know, I'm going to look like an egghead for a month because I have a brain tumor. No, we're not afraid of those issues, you know, socially, because that's not something to do with sex. People associate sex with something that's dirty or porn or smutty. It's sex. Sex can mean the sexual act. It can mean it can mean a gender. There's a lot of different terms to it. And I think because of the religious aspect of this country, we have taken a very simple term and turned it into something dirty.
Before having my breast double mastectomy, getting up every morning and putting on a sports bra that nearly squeezed the breath out of me, and then, you know, another sports bra on top of that, and then 4 shirts to hide the fact that I was pretty well endowed, unfortunately. So I had to hide that, and then of course you walk around like this with your shoulders all hunched over, and people just think there's something wrong with you because you don't have any confidence or whatever. So every morning that was the issue, you know, of how am I going to look, because I now kind of have facial hair, but I also have breasts, so that's kind of weird, you know, for some people.
I was in band. I was excited about that because we could wear suits, men's suits. Pretty skinny too.
There's always that fear. Somebody's going to find out. Somebody's going to you know, my sports bra is going to turn loose or something, you know, and it's going to be a bad, awkward situation. Or I'm going to be in an accident. I mean, there's one of those things, you know, we don't think about. I'm going to be in an accident. They're going to cut off my clothes, and here these breasts going to be, and I look like a guy on the outside, and here's this, you know. So living in fear, I think, was a big issue.
Oh, I'd like to have chest surgery at some point, and I may or may not have any genital surgery done. I think that I would like to see technology improve before I embarked on something like that. Of the two available surgeries, I would go with a metoidioplasty before I went with a phalloplasty. Phalloplasty, what I've seen most frequently is a radial forearm phalloplasty, which is where they take skin off your forearm and they kind of just roll that up into a little tube and stick it onto you, and then you get testicular implants. And then a phalloplasty, they're functional, right? For an erection, you pump up one testicle and the other testicle is like a deflate, and that is really not something I'm interested in. I'm totally not wanting to do that. From what I understand, there's not a whole lot of sensation in it. Plus, I think it would kind of kill the mood to have to pump up your erection. It just seemed, and it's not very. I mean, it's pretty shapeless too. It seems like something I'm not interested in having. Metoidioplasty, it looks real. I mean, it looks natural. The erection you would have would be natural. And most people who get that done also get testicular implants just for the aesthetic value. There's really little. Like, you can't really use it for penetration. So, really, it's just kind of for looks. Okay. There's all this clitoral growth that happens when a person goes on testosterone. But your clit's still connected to your body, like the way your earlobes are connected right here. And they clip that, except it's your clit, not your earlobe. And that frees it up. And your hood just remains as a foreskin. And like everything that I've seen of it, it looks really normal, just small. But a lot of people have said that they can't use it for penetration. And so I don't really see much of an advantage over that, you know, just like a $25,000 fee that that I don't really have to put down anyway. So to me at this point, it's not worth it. Maybe someday something will come along that I feel like I could in good conscience spend the money on. I was a very pretty girl, actually. I got this it's a double front compression vest. It's really breathable. It's made for men who have gynecomastia, which is that it's this hormonal condition where men grow breasts. And since it's actually made for men, it's a really good product. And underneath all this, I'm actually sporting a D cup.
With testosterone, being that I had a fully functioning female reproductive system at the time that I started undergoing this, what essentially happened is that my body went through menopause and puberty at the same time. So I had, like, hot flashes, mood swings, everything you'd associate with both of them, and for a while I was very difficult to live with, and Vanessa had to take the brunt of most of it.
It's ungodly expensive. I mean, speaking strictly from a financial aspect, it's crazy expensive. Insurance doesn't cover a lot of things, and so there's, you know, ongoing regimens of hormones and laser treatments. I've paid as much as $500 for a laser treatment, and now, you know, you can get them for about $125, but you know, you get what you pay for. You can go spend $300 for a laser treatment, you are going to get a better job. But you know, and then for someone such as myself, you know, my hair is not all my natural hair, so you know, I've got an extremely expensive program that I'm on that costs, you know, almost $250 a month just to maintain. I've got a lifetime ongoing expense from that aspect. Shh, be very, very quiet. We're hunting transsexuals. So you got $15,000 for the surgery. You got maybe another 3 to 5 involved in electrolysis and laser removal. You might have maybe a few other thousand wrapped up in hormones and such things such as that. But for myself, I've had no other surgery aside from breast implants. That was about $4,000, and the orchidectomy. So I've got probably $9,000 in surgeries. I've got probably about $10,000 invested in my hair so far, and you know, a few $1,000s in hormones. But now there's a lot of people that get the cheek implants and they get their head sculpted down to become more female, and they get the eyes redone and the chin, the throat, and everything. And those surgeries are extremely expensive. So I've never had them done, so I don't know. And I'm not pulling a Michael Jackson on you. So really, I'm telling the truth.
Yeah, I've had some problems really finding a good church. I guess my biggest problem is that I'm a fundamentalist transsexual. And that's not really a common thing to run across. I've been asked to leave some fellowships. I've been asked to just stay in the closet in some fellowships. And that's really difficult because then you can't make any authentic relationships with anyone in the church. And I do believe, and I want to say that pastors have a right and a responsibility to care for the spiritual health of the congregation as best as they know how. And this is not something that a lot of pastors have encountered.
It's hard, you know, as a transgendered parent, you know, to try and justify yourself as a parent, because most people that are transgendered end up leaving the relationship or end up going alone. And most people think it's because the transsexual in question is selfish, that they want that alone time. I can't speak for every transgendered person out there, but I can speak for myself. And in my situation, it wasn't about being selfish or wanting time to myself. It was wanting to give, at the time, my ex-wife the freedom to pursue a life of her own without the embarrassment of what I was going through, and to protect my kids, protect them from the embarrassment and the humiliation and the teasing. This way, they could always talk about their dad as being their dad, but he lives in Kansas City, as opposed to me being the one showing up at their soccer games and all that stuff. My kids call me Natty instead of Daddy. And that, you know, sometimes I think we should talk about changing that. Maybe it's not fair to ask that. When we started the name thing, it was Daddy and something to do with Nicole, because that's the name I was going by. So I didn't want to become the aunt or the distant cousin or something like that, which so many of the other people that go through this do. I wanted a term that was associative with being a parent. I wanted a term that, you know, sounded like Daddy, rolled off the tongue easily, and something that, you know, the kids were comfortable with. So we came up with Natty. I remember the first time they saw me in a nightgown, Bowman absolutely freaked out and told me to take it off, and didn't want to see me in it. Just really bothered him. But after they started hanging out around me during the day when we go to places and I would be dressed as a woman, they saw that I did the normal things with them. And they saw that I was just the same person, I just looked different. And the fact that my look has, you know, I've been fortunate enough to always be what I consider socially acceptable. I'm not saying I'm beautiful, I'm not saying that I'm this or that or the other thing. I'm just saying that I do tend to blend well, you know, in society. And that gives them a comfort zone where they don't feel any embarrassment or feel any undue attention drawn to them. So, you know, after they got over the initial shock, it went pretty all right with the kids. And we talk about it still to this day. You know, I tell them how sorry I am for doing this, and that I hope in my doing this I'm showing them that their life really is theirs. People say that I should have done this and I should have done that for the children, but you know what? This is my life, and I only have one to live. And if we're going to live by teaching our children by example, what a better example can you say to look at your children and say, you know what? There was something that I wanted so badly, I sacrificed everything for it.
My personal definition of anarchism is, well, this involves an amount of integrity to live true to what you believe. I would say that anarchism is a belief that life does not have the right to dominate other life. It inherently pits me against capitalism because capitalism is a pyramid scheme which necessitates keeping a number of people below the poverty line and or homeless so that people will work for low wages and poor conditions at a moment's notice. That's not only anti-anarchist but anti-Christian as well. If we're trying to put an end to suffering as best we know how, and we have to start on a real nuclear scale within this community. I mean, it builds from there. I heard a quote somewhere, and I don't remember who said it, but it was, no one was so foolish as the person who did nothing because he could only do a little. And I think that's true. That one person who maybe gets a coat from the one coat we give out is going to be really, really happy to have that coat. And it's, you know, it's going to change their world. While a lot of people in the anarchist community aren't doing this from a spiritual belief system, I feel commissioned by God to do this type of work. There's this perspective of us and them, and there can't really be that perspective because, I mean, that just fuels an arrogance which puts you above someone else. And the real perspective should be that we all need each other.
Because I'm transgendered, I think there is sometimes a presumption that I'm a card-carrying member of the Democratic Party, which is not the case. In fact, if there's a card in my wallet, it has an elephant on it and says Republican Party on it. I've never found a tremendous use for the attitude of, okay, well, I'm in this particular organization, and by and large, I stand for the same kinds of things this organization does, but they have this issue, and this issue that I don't agree with. So what I'm going to do is leave this organization that I have all these contacts with and whose interests dovetail with mine to a large degree because of these 1, 2, or 3 different issues that I do have a problem with, and go either try and set up some other organization or join some little splinter group that isn't going to have, you know, a ghost of a chance of influencing the political process. My attitude is much more, you know, I will stay in with the organization I am currently in with and work to change that organization from the inside. And one of the best ways I can do that is go, look, I'm a fiscal conservative, okay? On some issues, I'm a social conservative. On an international relations issue, I'm generally in line with most of the conservative party's stances. Most, not all. But what I can do is, as a good Republican Party member, and also as a transgender human being, put a face to this other portion of humanity that most people don't see within, you know, this particular party.
I had no problems at all coming out to my, you know, telling my friends that my partner was transgendered and stuff, and I knew my friends would all be okay with this. But coming out to some of my friends that my partner was Catholic was actually the part that I was nervous about. And then coming out to my friends that my partner was Republican. It's like,
You're dating
no,
a Catholic
you're dating a Republican?
There's this portrayal of the entire Republican Party as nothing more than a bunch of narrow-minded social bigots. And, well, I'm here to say that no, that's not everyone in the Republican Party. It's not even a majority of the individuals in the Republican Party. And so, you know, if I can stand there and say that, then I'm doing a service to both the rest of society by making sure that they understand what the Republican Party actually is, and at the same time doing a service to the Republican Party.
As you became aware of this in high school and then college, as you went on, that would be what most people would label as a lesbian position, but you don't label it that way. You didn't experience it that way.
No, I didn't.
Tell me about that.
I always identified as male, and so that was one of the things that kept me from dating women. There were obviously lesbians around, and I could have dated, but I didn't want to be labeled as a lesbian. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Had I been lesbian, I would have been fine with that, but I wasn't. I'm male, so I didn't date.
It's my 2nd grade picture. One of the dresses my mother made for me that I hated. The thing that surprised me, I guess, the most would be the prejudice that I experienced in my own community. I'd been in lesbian community for many, many years. Been going to church that was predominantly gay and lesbian for 15 plus years. And their reaction, I think, surprised me more than anybody else's. I thought they would be very supportive and understanding, and again, knowing that I was going to have to explain to them what was going on and give them some time. But I experienced more of name-calling from that community than I did the straight community by far. I was considered a traitor by the lesbian community because why couldn't I have just been a butch lesbian? And I could have, if that's what I was. I could have just been a butch lesbian, and I'd have been proud of that.
So I also got a lot of flack from the matriarch dykes when I came out and told them I was going to physically transition. There was a lot of talk about, oh, you're betraying the sisterhood. How can you do this? You know, we have this rich, beautiful history. And there is a rich, beautiful history, and that doesn't mean, you know, that I feel completely disconnected from it, but I don't identify as a lesbian.
People that watch this, the people that you say judge you, some of them will have in their mind, well, are you just saying God got it wrong, that you were just wired up wrong? Or are you saying that there was just a genetic mistake, that things were programmed wrong? How do you respond when someone asks you those questions? What's your reaction to it?
There's me and my brother. When I was 3 months old, my mother says it's her fault that I was born female because she willed me to be a girl. First and foremost to me is a birth defect, that it is my mind, my spirit, everything was male. My body was not congruent with that. So it was like, I need all of this to be the same, to be congruent, to be who I am, totally. And what prevented that was a birth defect. And the face of a little boy, not a little girl. Yeah, I remember going into church probably not long after. I mean, I kind of dropped out just a little bit for a while and then went back. And of course, when I went back, I had already started to grow facial hair. And walking through, the same people that had been hugging me the minute I walked in the door and, hey, how have you been? Were saying, well, look, there it is, or look, it's a he, she, and making fun of me, and I could hear that. I mean, I don't know if they intended for me to hear it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but it was extremely hurtful, and like I said, I was just totally shocked and very uncomfortable, and so I basically just quit going.
A lot of people say, you know, why do you fight? You're not going to make a difference. Look at the scriptures. You know, this is prophecy. This is what's going to come to pass, and nothing you say or do is going to make the difference. And what I would have to say, as far as that's concerned, is that God does not require results, only faithfulness, and that is exemplified in the book of Ezekiel. He told the prophet Ezekiel to go warn the Israelites against their corrupt ways and against what they were doing, and he told them flat out, they're not going to listen to you. But that's not on you, that's on them. Your job is to warn them against what they're doing and tell them that what they're doing is wrong and tell them that I'm not turning a blind eye to the fact that they're living horribly corrupt lives. They won't listen to you. Don't worry about that, tell them anyway. That's what God told Ezekiel. Are we more privileged than the prophet Ezekiel, that we don't have to warn people against their evil ways? We don't have to be obedient to God. Suddenly, we're exempt from having their blood on our hands because we didn't tell them that what they're doing is totally wrong and totally disgusting.
And I hated going to church, didn't we all? I mean, you know, we'd go to church and we'd sit there and I'd fall asleep and my parents would get mad at me. And then when my dad and my stepmom, after my parents divorced and I was living with my dad and my stepmom, we'd go to church. And it was just like a ritual. I didn't understand it, you know. We'd go to church and as soon as we'd leave church, life was just the same, you know. There's the cussing and it's like you went to church to say, okay, we're going to be wholesome for an hour. And then when you left, everything was just the same. And to me, I saw it as something phony and false and something that people did just as like a who's who. It's like a country club of if you go to the church, you're a good person. I don't have a problem with believing in God. I personally don't. But I don't have a problem with other people do. I just think people that want to worship God should do so out of love, not out of fear.
My mom got very melodramatic when I first told her. She said, like, I can actually quote what she said. She said, "I will grieve the loss of my daughter, but I cannot have another son."
Oh, geez.
And
Wow.
yeah, that just floored me. All I could think was Scarlett O'Hara,
Really?
and I, you know, but I knew it was a very inappropriate thing to say at the moment. So my dad said, "Well, I respect your free agency to make your own decisions, but you are no longer one of mine." So that was really upsetting, and I didn't talk to either of them for a long time. And my dad called and he apologized, you know, for what he said, and said, I mean, he didn't change his stance, but he did apologize and said I would always be his child, but you know, still wrote me letter after letter, you know, pleading with me to like change my mind. And you know, I mean, as far as my sexual identity went, you know, I didn't really have much of an option as far as that was concerned, but what he wanted me to do was decide to not physically transition. He believed there would be, you know, very heavy eternal consequences to pay, and I mean, I can't fault them for being concerned about me.
87, they wanted me to wear a dress, and I refused, and they told me I had to dress up, so I put that on. It was definitely a struggle for my mom to come to terms with it, and I think she still is coming to terms with it. But she's a lot more open now. We went out to lunch with her, and she told me that she'd actually done a lot of reading, and I don't know what other research she had been doing, but she wanted to come to some kinds of conclusions, and she was afraid initially that I was just being overly dramatic, is how she phrased it. And I mean, I had to kind of chuckle at that, because if this was just a little bit of drama, I mean, well, it's a whole lot of drama to put yourself through.
The way for me to tell my parents was to write them a letter. And it kind of sounds like the chicken way out, but I talked to my therapist, and she said that would probably be the best way. That way they didn't have to react, you know, to my face, which a lot of people would have a hard time with. So I told them that it basically in the letter said that they probably thought I was a lesbian, but I wasn't, and that I'd always felt male, and they're probably going to be surprised by that, and gave them some information about what transsexual meant and what the process entailed and all that. Gave them as much information as I could, so it's just a really thick letter. And I didn't hear from them for like 3 weeks, which was kind of that scary thing, because it was that fear that every LGBT person goes through of coming out to your parents. Are they still going to love me? Are they going to be there for me now? You know, but I was 46 years old, so it was like it was time for me to do what I wanted to do, and hopefully they would understand.
I kind of suspected before that, you know, not while she was growing up, but after she moved to Kansas City, and then I came up here later. That's when I began to get the idea. So when she told us, it wasn't a big shock for me, but she was scared, you know, afraid it was going to be something that we might not accept. But it didn't change her feelings for the person, you know, at all. Or at least, well, for me or his mother either. His mother took it a lot harder than I did, though, I think. She tried to think it might have been somehow her fault, you know, that she was in the wrong body, some defect that she might have caused course, it wasn't that. I guess if you're a mother, you can't hardly keep from thinking that. I don't know. And of course, we're disappointed we didn't have a daughter anymore. But it didn't change our feeling toward her at all, or to him.
So 3 weeks later, I basically heard from them. We got a phone call from my dad, and said that I'd left a little bit to their imagination, and could I maybe come home for the weekend and chat with them about it. And so it was it was scary, you know, to go home and sit in the hot seat, and that's exactly what happened. They said, sit down right here, and they sat across from me and kind of basically just asked a bunch of questions. And my mom cried, and I understood that because it was a grieving process for her. But she was trying to cope. That night we were sitting around, and Mom decided to show me how to do laundry. And it was kind of weird because it was like, I've been doing laundry for 46 years. So she would take me in, show me how to sort the clothes out, and then when they washed, she brought me in to show me how to dry them, and then after they dried, how to fold them. And I was looking at my dad like, I don't get it. He said, just let her go. Everybody has to cope in their own way, and I think what happens a lot is that when we come out to our parents with any situation, we expect them to immediately accept what we've said, and that doesn't always happen. My mom had to go through the grieving process. She had a daughter in her eyes, for 46 years, and now all of a sudden, her daughter's her son.
Kind of hard sometimes. I still say she. And I've done it today, you know. I try to watch it, but it don't bother him. You know, he expected it, I think. It's just something you have to get used to.
Now let's see, this would be the closet I share with Star. Male clothing for me. This would be all Star's, my shorts and that sort of thing. Turtleneck sweaters. Just a little lingerie. Well, I'm TG after all, so yeah, that tends to be the defining feature, I think. In that closet is where we keep all of the special costumes and garb and that sort of thing. So for doing Renaissance Fair, and that sort of clothing is all stuck in there, in that closet. Did I mention anything about a tornado of clothes? Because, well, you know, they're just sort of strewn out all over the place, including the ironing board. This is all mine. This is none of Star's. This is none of my partner's stuff.
I've been going to science fiction conventions for 20 years. Pooch and I go to a bunch of them, not as many as we used to, since he's a grad student now. Another thing we do with our time is go to Renaissance festivals. I've been going to Renaissance festivals
Far longer than any human should.
yeah.
We have spent over the course of many, many years probably way too much money on Renaissance garb and accessories and equipment.
Swords.
Not to mention food and drink.
Okay, comedy. Well, you just see a little bit of it, but I've always been a nut, you know, and I was in the studio with Johnny Dare. We were doing the Find Me a Date for Valentine's Day thing. And the owner of Stanford & Sons brought in Charles Fleischer, the voice of Roger Rabbit. And what he was always famous for is that rabbit that goes, please, or something like that. So, and that's how he actually does it too. And so anyway, we were cutting up in the studio, you know, and Charles Fleischer was doing a bunch of different voices and accents and stuff, and I do a whole bunch of different voices and accents. And so Craig Glazer says, hey, you're kind of funny, why don't you come down to the club and do some he-she material? So I said, okay, fine. So I thought about it for a while, and I wrote some material down, and I went down to the club on their amateur night, and 6 weeks later I had my own show. My act was geared around being a transsexual. For me, it felt like a contribution to my community, the transgender community, because so many people are so phobic about it. And I would get a totally straight crowd, 325 people in, sitting down, and not knowing what they were going to see, except here's this woman that's out on the billboard out front, and they think they're going to come in and see this woman do comedy. And the first thing I do is I say, you know, I am a she-male. For people that aren't familiar with that term, that means I'm a he-she, a she-he, or more commonly referred to as a chick with a dick. and I just put it out there. And for about the first 5-10 minutes, I could see people just kind of, you know, sit way back in their seat, guys mostly than women, but they were a little taken back. And to me, it was real important that we talk about the fears that people have and make jokes about them. And one of the fears that straight men have about transsexuals is that they think that every transsexual that comes around them is going to be hitting on them, or that they're attracted to men, you know, so they become a sexual target for a transsexual. And, you know, and there are, let's face it, there's transsexuals out there that are pretty scary looking, and it's not that it's any fault of their own or anything. That's just, you know, that again boils down to the issue of it's hard to change your appearance when you're 50 years old just going through this than when you're, you know, 19 years old and starting going through this process. Your body will age and grow in a whole different way on the hormones and the medications that you take to achieve your proper gender identity. You know, a lot of these people look pretty scary, and so we talk about that, you know, and I tell people that I date women, you know, I don't like men, and that makes the men a little bit more comfortable. And then we talk about just the normal things that I would talk about with a guy if I was still a guy in the locker room. We talk about sports, we talk about politics. And then one of my big jokes was, you know, we in the transsexual community are a lot more in the know than most people give us credit for. For example, did you know that when J. Edgar Hoover died, and for those of you that don't know who he is, was the head of the FBI for many, many years during the Kennedy administration and a couple others, when he died, he was found to be a cross-dresser. And this is an absolutely true story. They went through his stuff, they found pictures of him dressed as a woman, found clothes and all this sort of stuff. He was a cross-dresser for years and years and years. But most people don't realize that J. Edgar Hoover didn't really die. No, we in the transsexual community know that he's alive and well living as Janet Reno. And then, of course, you know, the crowd would laugh and there'd be a pause, and I'd say, and Jimmy Hoffa? You know, the guy that got chopped up and stuffed in a barrel by the mob someplace? Not true. Tammy Faye Baker. Yep. And Elvis Presley? Katie Lang refuses to comment.
People seem pretty generally inclined to accept me. You know, I don't honestly go out of my way to put myself in situations where I am likely to run across too much discrimination. You know, there's something to be said for, you know, not attending the local rally of the KKK while dressed as Andrea. I feel a little obligated to come to the defense of Christian religion and Catholics in general. Being Catholic myself, I think we do have a tendency, you know, we like to think of ourselves as being diverse and accepting and open and completely unlike those religious people over there that are completely closed off and unaccepting. And you know, it just behooves us to every once in a while remember that, you know, there are diverse, accepting people of all faiths, and there are closed-minded, ignorant individuals of all faiths as well.
I did it for spiritual reasons. I feel, in many ways, like God is calling me into more conservative ideas regarding sexuality, sex, sexual identity, and all surrounding topics. And I don't really know where to go from here. For a long time, I felt like I wasn't hearing from God, and I prayed for God to make me more receptive to His Word and His will for my life. And one morning I prayed, just like I do every morning, and no static, just 3 words: into your transition. Vanessa and I were together for almost 3 years, and the decision I made was extremely difficult for me, and it's extremely difficult for her. I think she believes that I'm suffering from schizophrenia or some other form of mental ill health. She doesn't believe in God.
I feel like this is just another way Christianity has messed somebody up. I feel like he's just gonna be like repressed for his whole life and not be happy and not ever really find peace. He said that he's finding peace through God now that he's ended the transition, but I can't imagine that he'll ever have peace stifling who he is and denying that. When he told me, I wasn't really surprised or shocked. I figured one day he'd probably leave me for a nice Christian girl. So it didn't really surprise me when he actually dumped me for Jesus instead.
With increased genital growth, of course, came increased genital sensation. I say of course, but I actually thought it was going to be the other way around. I thought I maybe would lose sensitivity. Absolutely not the case. Alright, so if you have contact with a normal clitoris, you know what it looks like. And this thing has a head on it. It gets stiff when I'm aroused. That's just how it works. And that's my privates. None of this actual belly hair was here yet, just the little trail from my belly button down to my groin. And it was about that same time that my mustache started getting thick and I was noticing just a little bit of stubble on my lower chin. The hair on my arms got thicker. I got hair just on the sides a little bit, and then my knuckles kind of filled in. And the rest of my hands just have light hair on them. I imagine that if I was continuing transition, I would probably have thicker hair on my hands, just because most of the men in my family do. My feet never had any hair on them, and now my feet are good and hairy. My blood pressure, of course, increased, which means that my veins got bigger, more pronounced. My blood pressure has decreased some since I have been off the testosterone, so my veins don't stick out as much as they used to. But that's also something that that just goes with the territory. I think my ears got a little bit bigger, and my feet grew a little bit. My nose got more bulbous. I used to have more narrow features. My face squared off, of course. My eyebrows got thicker. My hairline receded. It used to be out more around here, and it just kind of receded. Still being queer, while at the same time feeling called out of my transition, is a really weird position to be in. One of the things that strikes me is I kind of feel, in some ways, like I have split loyalties. The most disturbing thing is that some of the most hateful people I've ever met have been sitting in church pews right next to me. That's not how it should be. We're commissioned to love everyone.
How do you feel when you meet a woman that you really care about and you know you've got this time bomb ticking that you're going to have to say this at some point?
Women are attracted to me, and I think one of the reasons they're attracted to me is because I have a lot of qualities that they look for in a man, because I was raised female, that I'm probably a little more sensitive, and not more than every man. Obviously, there are a lot of men that are sensitive, but I think that I have a lot of qualities that they look for because of that, until they find out that I was biologically female, and then it's like, oh, well, been nice knowing you, maybe we can be friends, you know. They try to make it nice. They don't just like, oh, you're a freak and walk away, you know, kind of thing, but it still hurts, you know, nonetheless. I don't feel like it's a coming out for me. Does that make sense? I feel like this is who I am. This is how I come out to you. I'm male. This is who I've always been, male. So it's like, had I told you that when I was female, that would have been coming out for me. But now that I'm male, to me, there is no coming out process. What I have to reveal is that I don't have, you know, an 8-inch penis that a lot of guys brag about. You know, to me, having a penis does not make me male. So do I have to come out and say to you as a woman that I might be dating, oh, by the way, I don't have a penis?
I put things that we're going to on the calendar, and then things that he has to be a boy for, I put in blue. We went to Chicago for a family funeral. We went to see Fiddler on a Roof, which for me, some reason, is just a very traditional. It's something I've done a long time, and so I wanted him to be a boy for that. The Oscar party we're going to tonight, it's a formal event. I think it'd be a waste if he didn't go as Andrea, so that was a pink event. And then there's other things that we do that don't have a color, which is I really don't care whether you're a boy or a girl type of thing. This way I get some say, and if I have something where I definitely want one or the other, I just put it on the calendar that way.
With regard to if someday, if I transitioned or it got to the point where I could no longer pass as male without, you know, having to go through extreme efforts, where would I end up on this whole transgender spectrum? And I keep coming back to the fact that, you know, I like being a guy, I like being a girl, and so as a consequence, you know, if all of a sudden the gender presentation was such that I was always or constantly being taken as female, I would probably go out of my way to attempt to pass as a guy, and I would end up doing the transgender thing from the other perspective, doing the female trying to pass as male. That middle ground of being able to do both a guy and a girl is just so critically important to where I feel I am and what makes me feel happy about who I am. Italian charms, gotta love them. Gotta give a shout out to my Miami Dolphins because they're gonna have a really rotten season, so at least they ought to have some high point this year.
Now, I'm not even consistently presenting as male or female, you know? I kind of flip around a little bit, switch it up some. I used to present en femme on occasion when I was a teenager. And you know, they're reflexes, you know? I mean, you put on a skirt, you put on high heels, you know how to walk. Well, I mean, you have to walk a certain way in high heels. If you don't walk sexy in high heels, you're gonna lose your center of gravity and fall over. So if you wanna walk in high heels, you just have to walk sexy. Not only do I feel my spirituality shifting, but I feel like I'm just not able to connect, not able to hear as well. And I mean, I'm sure that God wants to communicate with me, and there's something that I'm doing that's not really allowing that. But right now, well, obviously a lot's been going on, so. And that's where the split loyalties come in, because I ended this whole transition thing for God. That was it. And I guess I figured and was counting on getting some direction after that. I mean, I'm not trying to say that God owes me anything more, but I was sort of figuring I'd get some clear direction, and I feel in some ways that hasn't happened. Like I dropped off my transition and boom, here I am. It's like, okay, we're good. What? And I've always had a lot of loyalties to queer culture because I'll just say that my experience has been that they take care of their own a lot better than the church does. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about my family. I don't know how to interact with that segment of my life, not just the people, but just that whole segment of reality. You know, I mean, being a transsexual, it's like you either have to like come clean with your family or fake your death. You know, what happens when that ends? I mean, but it hasn't ended, see? And how do you explain to your family something that you know they'll never understand?
The goal in what all transsexual people have done is to be normal and to be accepted. And And sometimes, you know, we all take different paths in getting there, but, you know, for me to just have a normal job and be able to get up in the morning and go to work and come home and have coworkers that deal with me and treat me as a woman without the knowledge of anything prior to that, was something that I wanted to be a part of their experience, for lack of a better term. And you know, it's had its challenges. I mean, for the last 5 years, I haven't had to have any secrets. I didn't care who knew. Nobody really affected me. I didn't have to answer to anybody. But now I've got that big secret, you know, so it is important to me that people don't know. I do have to be careful of things I do and things I say. You'll never find John Ashcroft walking through a place like this. He'd be walking around covering up every statue left and right. I think if anything, they wonder if I'm a lesbian because I always talk about my roommate, you know, and she's this and she's that and, you know, blah, 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 and her and I are doing this and her and I are doing that. And so I think they kind of take my mannish features and play it off as, well, she's a little masculine, that's why she's a lesbian.
The community I lived in for many years was a lesbian community. I'm way too male for the lesbian community now. So I am kind of stuck in the middle, and that does get kind of lonely sometimes. But, you know, if it's meant to be, I guess it will, and I just had to trust that if there's somebody out there, God will bring them to me, and if not, I'll be living with my dogs the rest of my life.
Hair, thousands of dollars. Nails, 65. Tits, 4,000. Other miscellaneous surgeries, a couple of thousand. But the cost of personal and total freedom, priceless.